A powerful force hurled Jaehyun backward. Fresh blood splattered, staining his white hair crimson and scattering across his wounded body. As his consciousness faded, a bitterly sarcastic smile bloomed on Jaehyun's blood-smeared lips. He rasped in his last breath, a vow etched into his very being by pain and betrayal. If I ever trust anyone again in this life, then I'll be a dog. Though his body was at its limit, his eyes burned with a terrifying light, reflecting hatred and a chilling resolve newly forged in hell.
A cold blue light flickered in Sirre's eyes, hidden behind her slender fingers. Her voice rang out, decisive and ruthless, an order that could not be refused. Kill him. Upon receiving the order, the masked warrior roared savagely. His muscles rippled as he swung his massive stone axe high. Incredible power channeled into the blow, aimed directly at the man pinned on the ground. The axe blade tore through the air, carrying the force to crush anything in its path. The warrior gritted his teeth, putting all his body weight into driving the weapon down, determined to finish his opponent in a single strike. But just as the axe blade was about to strike, a figure suddenly lunged forward like a bolt of lightning. A hand appeared, seizing the warrior's wrist, halting the fatal blow. A gruesome crack echoed as the terrifying force of the blow was completely restrained by an unimaginable resistance. The entire body of the white-haired man who had just appeared was enveloped in an aura of mystical blue light. He effortlessly blocked the descending blow, while the warrior could only stand dumbfounded, astonished by the sudden intervention and the stranger's extraordinary power.
The armored warriors suddenly cheered in delight as they recognized the familiar figure. The bearded leader enthusiastically yelled, "Jaehyun!" However, their joy was cut short when a blue-armored soldier shouted, "It's Hyrkan! Capture him! If we all charge together!" In response to that reckless call to arms, Jaehyun remained motionless, his hood obscuring half of his face. A brilliant blue aura blazed around his body. His eyes flashed with a cold light, unwavering. He didn't flinch as the bloodthirsty crowd charged towards him. In the blink of an eye, Jaehyun vanished from his original position. He plunged into the enemy formation like a storm, the sword in his hand drawing cruel and lightning-fast slashes. A streak of blue flashed past, leaving behind bodies collapsing onto the leaf-strewn ground. When the whirlwind subsided, Jaehyun stood tall amidst the chaotic battlefield. He glanced at the defeated enemies at his feet, his voice cold and mocking echoing in the silent space. Did you really think charging together would make a difference?
Amidst the floating dust motes, Hyrkan lifted his head, a proud smile gracing his blood-streaked face. He coldly declared, "You can't defeat me." However, his teammates hung their heads, remorse etched on their faces. One of them, seemingly the leader, looked up at Hyrkan with guilty eyes, stammering, I'm sorry, Jaehyun. It's all our fault. We didn't expect those bastards to ambush us here." The smugness on Hyrkan's face vanished. He frowned slightly, his hand tightening on the hilt of the sword behind him. He spoke, his voice somewhat annoyed. "No, what are you apologizing for?" Without hesitation, he reached out to the teammate kneeling on the ground. A soft green light emanated from his palm, enveloping the space before him. The man looked up in astonishment, meeting Hyrkan's determined gaze. "I'm fine. Get up."
"Jaehyun! Jaehyun!" The man in golden armor's voice trembled, desperately pleading. "Actually, it wasn't our fault, right?" In Hyrkan's mind, the venomous words of the past echoed like sharp knives. Blame that pathetic loser who always lags behind because she lacks skill. Isn't that right, you idiot? Rage flared in his blue eyes. Hyrkan gritted his teeth, his fiery gaze meeting Sirre's self-satisfied smirk. Seated majestically on her throne, she spoke in a cold, sarcastic tone. "What a touching friendship. Why are you all being so sentimental? Even when garbage gathers together, it's still just garbage." The sound of resolute footsteps echoed. Sirre and her entourage advanced coldly.
Amidst the dreamlike green space, Sirre stood with proud confidence, her long black hair gently swaying in the wind. Her piercing blue eyes stared straight ahead, a faint yet condescending smile gracing her lips. Facing her, Hyrkan merely scoffed. Who's the one who always grinds their teeth and charges in every time they're defeated by trash over and over again? His tone was full of mockery, a sharp smile etched on his angular face. The smile on Sir's lips instantly froze, replaced by a stunned expression mixed with rising fury. Her eyes flashed, and she warned through gritted teeth, "Watch your mouth. Don't come crying and regret later." Regret? Hyrkan repeated her words, his face showing amusement, as if he had just heard a very funny joke. Without another word, Hyrkan slowly raised his left hand, a dry click echoing as he activated the high-tech watch on his wrist. The watch face flashed, displaying the words "slot on." Immediately, a brilliant blue energy, like streams of digital data, poured from the device, enveloping Hyrkan's arm and entire body in a powerful aura. The surrounding air became extremely tense, signaling an unavoidable battle.
Glimmering blue data blocks sparkled and dissipated around Hyrkan's figure. He stood there, katana gripped tightly in his hand, the mask concealing the upper half of his face but failing to hide his smug smirk. That's a feeling only weaklings like you can have, he scoffed, his sharp gaze fixed on his opponent. Hearing the provocation, Sirre's face flushed with rage. She gritted her teeth, her hand clutching her collar as if to suppress her burning fury. "Arrogant bastard! Kill him!" she screamed, her voice cracking with anger. In response to the hateful command, Hyrkan simply burst into arrogant laughter. "Kill me? Don't you ever learn? You'll never be able to kill me!" His words were abruptly cut off. A streak of crimson light tore through the air, slashing directly into Hyrkan's chest. Fresh blood splattered. The confident smile on his lips froze, replaced by wide eyes filled with shock and disbelief. Huh?
A sense of unease suddenly washed over Hyrkan as strange figures abruptly appeared before him. What the? Before he could gather his wits, a sharp, chilling pain pierced him from behind. Hyrkan froze, coughing up a mouthful of fresh blood, his eyes wide with horror and disbelief. A razor-sharp dagger, stained red with his comrade's blood, had pierced through his body. Piercing ding sounds rang out continuously as a series of red notification windows appeared before his eyes. HP rapidly decreasing, movement restricted. Hyrkan's body began to dissolve into streams of blue data as he collapsed to the damp ground. "What is this? Cuff?" He wheezed with difficulty, struggling to look up at his attacker. From above, a familiar voice echoed down, cold and distant. "Sorry for deceiving you, Jaehyun. We all have to make a living. Don't blame me for this." What? The cruel explanation struck Hyrkan's mind like a hammer blow. He lay there, drenched in cold sweat, his eyes filled with utter bewilderment at the blatant betrayal. In the silence of the forest, a dry, bitter snort escaped his throat. Phut. Huh.
Amidst the lush green forest, Sirre's chilling, gleeful laughter echoed. She clutched her stomach, throwing her head back in a burst of triumphant laughter, her long black hair flying with each tremor of her body. At her feet, Hyrkan lay sprawled on the damp ground, his eyes wide with shock, unable to believe the scene before him. Sirre took a decisive step towards Hyrkan, her heel pressing lightly into the moist layer of leaves. She gently covered her mouth, her eyes curving into a mocking crescent moon. "Oh my, you really are stupid," her voice rang out, sweet yet sharp as a knife. "You got caught up in that ridiculous fantasy of friendship, as if it matters compared to money?" The atmosphere around them suddenly became silent, with only tiny glowing particles drifting in the air. Sirre leaned down, her silky black hair falling close to Hyrkan's bewildered face. Her voice became cold, devoid of any warmth. "Hyrkan, I'm going to eliminate you from this game. If I just keep killing you every time you log in, even you won't be able to progress." She gently smoothed the strand, her blue eyes flashing with a cruel light in the dim forest light. A smug smirk bloomed on her lips, signaling an unshakable verdict.
Hyrkan's breathing became labored, each exhausted gasp escaping as he collapsed onto the damp grass. From above, Sir's voice rang out, cold and condescending. "Oh right, you're a full-time warlord gamer, aren't you?" she mocked. Wasn't it you who said you were a worthless piece of trash with nothing but this game? Too bad for you. A twisted, cruel smile bloomed on Sirre's lips, her eyes flashing with madness as she uttered the final words. You're back to being trash again. Each word was like a dagger stabbing into Hyrkan's pride. His hands clenched into the ground, his whole body trembling with rage. Damn it, Hyrkan roared in despair. Shut your mouth! With the last of his strength, he surged to his feet, charging forward in a frenzy of fury. But in response to his desperate attack, there was only a sharp sound, tearing through the air. A cry of pain echoed, followed by a streak of crimson blood spraying, dyeing the space red.
A sudden, sharp pain shot through Hyrkan's back. His eyes widened in horror, splatters of fresh blood erupting in his vision. Nearby, Sirre stood motionless, a hint of surprise on her beautiful face. "Oh dear," she murmured, her tone as casual as if she had witnessed a minor incident. The cold blade twisted deeper, and Hyrkan collapsed, his breath catching in his throat. He was being held down by his own teammates, a dagger buried in his body. As his strength ebbed away, Hyrkan saw Sirre slowly fall to the grass, a satisfied smile gracing her lips. "Thank you, everyone," she whispered. Blood began to trickle from the corner of Hyrkan's mouth. He looked up at those who had once been his brothers in arms, his eyes filled with bewilderment and disbelief. Why? You know how much I've given to our guild." The man holding him, the one who had delivered the fatal blow, leaned down and looked at him with contempt. He called Hyrkan by his real name in a cruel tone. "Jaehyun, just die. People are paying us hundreds of millions just to take your life. What else do you expect us to do?" Those venomous words were more painful than the physical wound. Hyrkan's entire body trembled, not from the cold of approaching death, but from the burning rage of betrayal. "Just for money?" he choked out, blood mingling with his words. "Do you even know all that I've done for you?" The man holding him, the one who had delivered the fatal blow, leaned down and looked at him with contempt. He called Hyrkan by his real name in a cruel tone. "Jaehyun, just die. People are paying us hundreds of millions just to take your life. What else do you expect us to do?" Those venomous words were more painful than the physical wound. Hyrkan's entire body trembled, not from the cold of approaching death, but from the burning rage of betrayal. "Just for money?" he choked out, blood mingling with his words. "Do you even know all that I've done for you?"
Fresh blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Hyrkan collapsed, his eyes filled with resentment and despair. His final breath in this virtual world became a pained growl, echoing in the pink-tinged sky of the sunset. "Didn't you say we were family? Damn it!" From above, Sirre looked down at him with an indifferent, almost cold expression, a faint, almost emotionless smile playing on her lips. Beside her, another man grinned savagely, his eyes gleaming with a morbid delight as he witnessed Hyrkan's downfall. Damn it! The last curse echoed in his mind as his consciousness gradually sank into endless darkness. The virtual world shattered. Before him was only a pitch-black screen, torn apart by glaring, blood-red system messages flashing incessantly. Deceased. Warning. The lines of text continued to appear one after another, relentless and cold. Finally, a huge notification appeared, hammering into his retina. Warning. You have died. Penalty. Unable to log in for 48 hours. Hyrkan's eyes widened, his horror reflecting the crimson light of failure. A piercing whoosh sounded. The real world rushed back abruptly and violently. Ahn Jaehyun jolted upright in the login machine, the helmet still on his head. He gasped for breath, his chest heaving violently, trying to gulp in every bit of air in the dark and cluttered room.
In the darkness of despair, Jaehyun hung his head, the heavy weight of failure pressing down on his shoulders. "I've lost everything. It all started with Warlord." This AI-driven virtual reality game had become a global phenomenon, captivating millions of players. Dramatic sieges, like the scene of a colossal red dragon roaring in a sea of flames, were streamed live to tens of thousands of viewers who readily donated massive sums of money to show their admiration. It was a world that could generate unimaginable wealth, and it was the only thing I had ever been good at. In real life, I was just a useless nobody, but in Warlord, as Hyrkan, I was a completely different person. Under the dim light of the forest, the blood of the recently slain monster still glistened on my sword. A man in armor with a friendly smile and a ponytail approached me. He exclaimed in astonishment, "Wow, what level are you? Your gaming skills are incredible. Would you like to form a guild with me?" He extended his hand, a sincere invitation. That handshake was proof of recognition. It was the only place I truly belonged. It used to be.
Tears streamed down his cheeks as bitter memories flooded back, Jaehyun grinding his teeth together. "I forgive them." The whispered words of the past echoed, a self-deceiving promise. He had once grabbed a jacket, slipped on sandals, and rushed out into the night, leaving behind panicked faces, desperate arms reaching out to him. Back then, he had chosen to leave, but now only seething resentment remained in his heart. "I will find them and kill them all." Just then, the phone in his hand vibrated intensely, the screen lighting up with the words, "Dong-soo is calling." Jaehyun stared at it, bitter questions swirling in his mind. What was the point of enduring all that hardship, just so those bastards could live a good life without me? He walked aimlessly, not noticing the pedestrian light had turned red. The savage screech of tires on asphalt erupted beside him. A truck was speeding towards him at a terrifying pace. In the final moment, as the blinding headlights swallowed him whole, Jaehyun's face contorted in pain and utter despair. Tears streamed endlessly. Damn it, if only I knew things would end up like this.
If only I hadn't bothered caring about anyone else from the very beginning. A horrifying crash erupted, tearing through the silent night. The jarring sound of metal colliding and bones breaking echoed in the air. Jaehyun's body was flung into the air like a broken puppet before slamming onto the cold pavement. Fresh blood immediately poured out, staining a section of the road red, mottled among the white paints of the crosswalk. Amidst the scattered debris, Jaehyun lay motionless, the piercing screams of passers-by echoing from afar. His consciousness faded into darkness, his breath becoming ragged and heavy. Beside him, the shattered phone emitted a cold, automated voice. "The number you have dialed is currently unavailable. Please try again later." "Damn it," Jaehyun groaned inwardly, the strong metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. Of all things, it had to be a garbage truck. No, I can't die now. That treacherous bastard.
Lying in a pool of blood, Jaehyun's consciousness gradually dissolved. He raised his hazy eyes to look at the figure standing over him. The man, with a ferocious expression, roared maniacally. "Just die already. They're offering hundreds of millions just to kill you. What else do you think we'd do?" Hatred flared in Jaehyun's heart as he thought about that bastard who betrayed him. Immediately after, the image of Sirre's malicious and satisfied smile appeared, haunting his mind. In his final moments, as life slipped from his grasp, a venomous vow was etched deep into Jaehyun's soul. "I must take revenge on all of them in the most brutal way." His consciousness plunged into endless darkness, then was suddenly torn apart by a strange blue light. In the midst of the ethereal space, electronic lines of text began to appear. "Connecting. Authenticating user." A notification window suddenly popped up in front of him. "Welcome. Username Hyrkan." Jaehyun slowly opened his eyes, his piercing blue eyes reflecting utter bewilderment and confusion.
A dry ding echoed and a cold blue system window appeared before his eyes. Tutorial complete. Survive the maze master, Minotaur. Immediately after the announcement, a colossal monster with a human body and a bull's head emerged, its red eyes flashing with deadly light in the darkness of the maze. At the monster's feet, bodies lay scattered in pools of blood. Its enormous shadow loomed over the catastrophic scene, an overwhelming power that suffocated. Jaehyun was stunned, his mind blank. A tutorial quest? What the hell is this? He thought, his eyes wide with disbelief at what was happening. "Hey, rookie!" a rough voice boomed, interrupting Jaehyun's thoughts. A man who looked experienced, gripping a sword tightly, shouted angrily, "Don't just stand there! Pull yourself together! You saw the announcement, didn't you? We have to take down that monster!" The Minotaur responded to the challenge with an earth-shattering roar, shaking the very space around them. The monster panted heavily, exhaling hot air. In the ruined hall, only the three of them remained, facing it. The man who had shouted assessed the situation and said, "Looks like one person alone can't take this thing down. Maybe all three of us have to charge together." His gaze shifted to Jaehyun, his voice decisively ordering, "You take the first hit."
In the dark, damp space of a cave, Jaehyun leaned against the cold rock wall, his mind in turmoil. He mumbled to himself, "The guide boss? The Minotaur? Wasn't it removed 5 years ago because of the difficulty?" His words caused a man in the group to turn and look at him with a confused expression. 5 years ago? What are you talking about? Warlord only came out 10 months ago. That information was like a bolt of lightning, leaving Jaehyun completely stunned. His face was blank, his mind empty. 10 months ago? While Jaehyun was still trying to absorb this unbelievable truth, his teammates had begun to look at him with suspicion. He slowly stood up, muttering as if to reassure himself. "Oh, I see. It's only been 10 months. The man from before, looking impatient, began to give orders. "All right, focus everyone. When I signal, you rush out and—" But before he could finish, a figure flashed past. Jaehyun suddenly surged forward, without a word of warning. The rapid sound of his footsteps echoed in the cave. "Where are you going?" the man shouted in astonishment. Leaving his stunned teammates behind, Jaehyun charged ahead alone, his steps decisive on the cold stone floor, leaving behind bewilderment and a big question mark for everyone.
In the dilapidated dungeon, two guards stood frozen at the gate, utterly horrified by the scene unfolding before them. One couldn't help but cry out in despair, "Hey, are you crazy?" Ignoring the warning, Jaehyun didn't hesitate. He shot forward, his body like an arrow piercing the heavy air, heading straight for the colossal monster. The beast's crimson eyes immediately locked onto the small figure charging towards it. Roaring furiously, it growled, its voice shaking the very ground. "You will die!" It swung its enormous fist, the size of a boulder, down on Jaehyun's position with devastating force. The punch tore through the air, carrying a deathly red aura. But just as the fist was about to crush him, Jaehyun calmly raised his arm to block. A terrifying sound echoed. His eyes flashed with a cold blue light as he effortlessly stopped the heaven-shattering attack. At the point of impact, a brilliant blue aura erupted, completely overwhelming the monster's fiery red power.
A dazzling blue energy flashed, tearing through space in a sharp and brutal slash. With icy eyes and intense focus, Jaehyun unleashed a single blow. The blade of light sliced through the monster's body with ease, fresh blood spraying, staining a patch of dark rock crimson. In a final, agonizing roar, the monster's massive body was cleaved in two and crashed to the ground with a heavy thud, ending its existence instantly. Witnessing the scene from afar, two men could only stand dumbfounded. One of them, with an expression of utter astonishment, stammered, "What? That guy just took down that monster with a single blow?" The comrade beside him merely glanced at him, a knowing smirk playing on his lips, as if he had anticipated this outcome.
In the desolate and frigid space, a voice suddenly echoed, shattering the heavy silence. Jaehyun, his face smeared with blood, flinched and turned around. Before him, a man with neatly tied black hair was smiling, extending a hand in a friendly gesture. "I don't usually say things like this, but you have real talent. Would you like to join our group?" The invitation and the outstretched hand were like a cruel key, throwing open the door to painful memories that Jaehyun had tried to bury. The image of a person in armor with a hand outstretched in the hazy past resurfaced, overlapping with reality. Jaehyun's eyes widened, his previous exhaustion vanished, replaced by horror and a cold, resolute glint. He slowly stood up, the sword in his hand seemingly sensing his master's change. Amidst the shattered stone, Jaehyun lowered himself, his voice deepening, heavy. "I just made a decision a moment ago." The two men stared at each other blankly, completely uncomprehending. One of them asked back in confusion, "Huh? A decision? What decision?" Before he could finish speaking, a blinding light sliced through the air. Jaehyun surged forward like a storm, his blade tracing a deadly blue streak. The faces of the two recruiters froze in astonishment and disbelief as the fatal blow was upon them.
A tremendous force hurled Jaehyun backward, fresh blood sprayed, staining his white hair crimson and splattering across his battered body. As consciousness faded, a bitterly sarcastic smile bloomed on Jaehyun's bloodied lips. He rasped in his last breath, a vow etched into his very soul by pain and betrayal. "If I ever trust anyone again in this life, then I'm a dog." Though his body was at its limit, his eyes burned with a terrifying intensity, reflecting hatred and a cold determination forged in hell.